Welcome to Channel 17, the Town of Colonie Government Channel.
All right, welcome to 30 Books in 30 Minutes. My name is Joe Nash, and I'm here with Zina Shevchik. We're both librarians here at the library, and if you saw our last show, we're going to be doing this every once in a while. The library gets approximately 100 new books a week, and we're here to tell you about some new books. What we've done is we've taken some books from our new book shelf, and we've gone to our technical services department where even newer books are being processed, and we're going to just tell you about some. So Zina, why don't you go first, and we'll hear about some new books.
Okay, all of these books, they can have reserves put on them. We'll tell you if there's any reference books or things that don't circulate, but just assume that all of these books are going to be listed in our catalog, and that you can put reserves on them by going to our online catalog at www.colonie.org/library or calling the information desk. The first book that I'm going to talk to you about is a novel. It's called The Leisure Seeker by Michael Zadorian. And I actually read parts of it last night, and I found it very amusing and very on point. It's about a couple who are in their 80s, and the wife has cancer, and she's chosen to stop treatment, and her husband has Alzheimer's. And as the book cover reads, yearning for one last adventure, the self-proclaimed down-on-their-luck geezers kidnap themselves from their adult children and doctors who seem to run their lives, and they're going to steal away from their home in Detroit on a forbidden vacation of rediscovery. And the Leisure Seeker comes from the name of their 1978 RV, and their goal is Disneyland, where they have great memories of taking their children a long, long time ago. And they follow Route 66 and across the country. And I just highly recommend it. It was, as I said, really true. And you may not like the ending some, but it's certainly worth the tour for this book.
Okay.
Joe?
Very good. That sounds like a good book. I have chosen a book kind of hefty here. This book is called Planet Ape. It's a very large book. It's about the great apes and our relationship as humans to them. And it's written by Desmond Morris and Steve Parker. And Desmond Morris, in case you don't know, if the name might be familiar, way back about 40 years ago, he wrote a very famous book called The Naked Ape, I think in the 1960s, and he's sort of one of the foremost primatologists. So, and the book is lavishly illustrated, tons of pictures and maps and charts, great text. I'll just read you the 10 chapters to get an idea what the book's about. Meet the Great Apes, Family Portraits of Apes and Men, Ape Anatomy, The Daily Meal, Communication Skills, Social Life, Sex Life, The Stages of Life, Growing Threats, and then Saving Planet Ape. I think, the apes are endangered. I was skimming through the chapter, for example, on social life of the apes. It was like reading about us humans, the way we behave. So it's a very interesting book. I think we can learn from the apes about our humanness, and looks like a very interesting book. So that's called Planet Ape by Desmond Morris with Steve Parker. Zina?
Okay, the next book that I chose is called A Rainbow in the Night, The Tumultuous Birth of South Africa by Dominic Lapierre. This book is a history of South Africa, and it starts way back in 1652, and I did not know this, that a small group of Dutch farmers landed on the southernmost tip of Africa. And this colony was designed by the Dutch East India Company to simply grow vegetables and supply the ships that were rounding the Cape. What is it? Cape
Horn.
Cape Horn, right? That's what I thought it was. But he tells you about the strict Calvinist faith that the settlers followed, and what followed from there. But it goes into the background of apartheid, and all the way up to Nelson Mandela and the Desmond Tutu and the Truth and Reconciliation committees. It's very readable, and it's quite short, and the author does not pretend to have an epic, this to be an epic, all-encompassing history of South Africa. It's more the story of the development of apartheid in South Africa, and it's actually, as I said, it's not very long. It's not even 300 pages, and lots of white space in the pages and big print. I highly recommend this. I think it's particularly relevant. I know there's a movie coming out soon with Morgan Freeman and Matt Damon about the beginnings of Nelson Mandela's presidency, prime minister, I'm not sure, of South Africa. So, A Rainbow in the Night, Dominique Lapierre.
Now, before people write in and tell us Cape Horn is South America.
Yeah,
I was wrong.
I know.
It's Cape of Good Hope.
Good Hope there. I knew, I was looking to you. I figured you'd know.
All right. So I'm going to tell you now about the Library of America. You may have seen these books around. They're uniform editions. They have black covers, usually the author's picture. The Library of America has been around since 1982, and they've so far put out over 200 volumes. They put out new volumes every month. They put out new ones, and what they're doing is trying to sort of create a national literature, sort of based on the French, I forgot the name of the French national books. And it's as you can imagine, it's Mark Twain and William Faulkner and Edith Wharton and Edgar Allan Poe and Henry James. And many of these authors have several volumes, so you get the idea. And there's also several special editions, like there's one on just baseball writing. There's one on reporting World War II, 2 volumes of reporters. And so they have many special editions. So anyway, here's a new one we just got, and it's 3 volumes, and it's the collected stories of Isaac Bashev Singer. He wrote mainly in Yiddish, and he was from Poland, so you're probably wondering why he's in the Library of America. I don't think he became a citizen, but he lived in America since the 30s. He escaped the Holocaust, and he's sort of adopted this country, so that's why they've included him. And many of his later stories do take place in New York City. And you may have heard some of the stories are pretty famous. Gimple the Fool, the Spinoza of Market Street, the Cafeteria, A Friend of Kafka. And the interesting thing is he wrote in Yiddish and he translated them, and he oversaw the translations, but for some reason he never chose to write in English. I don't know why, but if you know his stories, they're wonderful. I'll just read you one brief quote by the great American literary critic Joseph Epstein. When this series came out, these 3 books, he wrote this about in a review. He said, "On a few occasions, I have been asked who among the writers of the past half century I thought might be read 100 years from now. I could think of only Isaac Bashev Singer, chiefly because he is the single writer of our time who might as easily have been read 100 years before his birth. And yet most critics prefer not to delve into the reason behind Singer's literary timeliness." So I've read many of these stories in the past. If you know Isaac Bashev Singer, these are wonderful stories. And I'll just give a brief plug for another new Library of America one we got. It's a 2-volume set. One was checked out, but I have one here. One of my all-time favorite authors, John Cheever. There's a volume of his complete stories, not just the 61 that you might know from the big red book with the big C, won all the awards in 1979. There's a lot of uncollected stories and early stories is one volume. This volume are his 5 novels. The Wapshot Chronicle, The Wapshot Scandal, Bullet Park, Falconer, and Know What a Paradise It Seems. John Cheever, one of my all-time favorite authors. So we have 2 volumes now of practically everything he wrote in the Library of America. So if you like John Cheever, come and check these out.
And all those books look the same, right?
They're
all
uniform.
black,
They're uniform editions. They all have the black. Yes.
but they're in different parts of the library. They're different. They're shelved in different
Yes,
parts.
there depends on if it's new, it's up with the new books. If it's fiction, it's with fiction. If there's some nonfiction ones, they're with none. But if you just look them up, you can find them. And if you go to LOA.org, their website's tremendous. You can see the kind of stuff they have, and we probably have almost all of them in our library. So
Great books.
they're great things to have. All right.
Things that should be in the library. Now I'm going to show a book that's kind of characteristics of librarians. This is a book on grammar. Woe is I. It's kind of a 13-year-old classic. The first edition was written in 1996. This is the third edition, and it's really the most popular book on grammar ever published. I, again, find it very amusing to read, even if I'm not looking for a particular point of grammar. I saw it when it first came into the library 10, 15 years ago, but I never really took a good look at it. Woe is I, therapy for pronoun anxiety. The point of Woe is I is that not to be too strict about grammar, that the point of grammar is to make things more clear, to clear up misunderstandings in spoken and written language. And so most of us say, woe is me. That's fine. Woe is I. Woe is I is the correct one, a correct way to present your speech, but doesn't have to be that way. Here's other plurals. These are chapter headings. Plurals before swine. Blunders with numbers. They beg to disagree. Putting verbs in their place. So to speak, talking points on pronunciation, and then my favorite, Kama Sutra, the joy of punctuation. And even within the body of this grammar book, they're hilarious puns, and it is so it's fun to read, but it's easy to use as well. So, Woe is I, third edition.
All right. Very interesting. Now, this book I'm going to talk about, I should say a word about our nonfiction, the new book section. It's very large, if you know our library. I would say at least half the books are books on practical things, how to do things, and cookbooks. Our cookbook section is excellent, and some people, I think, don't realize we have books like this, like the Planet 8 book I just talked about. So here's a book. It's published by the American Medical Association, so you know it has some good information in it. It's called The Guide to Preventing and Treating Heart Disease. And the subtitle is Essential Information You and Your Family Need to Know About Having a Healthy Heart. And again, it's filled with practical information and diagrams all about heart health and different ways to live a healthier lifestyle as your heart goes. And again, because we don't have time to read all these books, I'll just read you some of the chapter headings to get the idea of what the book's about. Your heart and circulatory system, managing your cholesterol level, high blood pressure, quitting smoking, exercise and physical activity, eating healthfully for a lifetime, overweight and obesity, controlling diabetes, stress, physical examinations and diagnostic tests, heart attack, heart valve problems, stroke and other diseases of the blood vessels, congestive heart failure, and then the last chapter is called Women and Heart Disease. So this book has a lot of practical information, drawings, charts, graphs, and it has probably good advice for leading a healthier lifestyle.
Eat less and exercise. All right, my next book is mystery detective story. I'm a real mystery reader. And this stood out because it takes place in London. It's contemporary. It's a woman protagonist, detective, oh my goodness, Kathy Cola. Detective Inspector Kathy Cola with her superior, DCI David Brock. And the dead body is found in a library. All the essential components to a good mystery. Actually, I have never read this author, Dark Mirror by Barry Maitland, Maitland. And I started to read it, and it grabbed me right away. And I think anyone who likes those components, to a good mystery story, will enjoy this book. He previously, Barry Maitland wrote a book called, let's see if I can figure this out, No Trace, and that was his first novel, his first mystery, and he got a lot of awards for that book. So this is a follow-up. Apparently, he's going to continue with Detective Inspector Kathy Cola and DCI David Brock in a series. So here's something, something new, relatively new, for you to try if you're a mystery reader. Joe?
Okay. Here's a new biography. Now, I have several biographies here, and it's interesting that even people who have many books written about them still have books written about them, and there's always new information coming out and different ways of writing. And I think it's always interesting who writes the book. This is a new biography of Louis Armstrong called Pops, and it's, as I said last time, one of our occupational hazards of being a librarian is we have to read a lot of book reviews, and this book is receiving just excellent reviews from everybody. The book is by Terry Teachout. He is the drama and cultural critic, and he writes a lot of music criticism for the Wall Street Journal and Commentary Magazine, and I think National Review sometimes. He does write about politics, so you might know his name. And this book was on last week, I think it was, the 3 daily book reviewers for the New York Times wrote their 10 best books of the year, and one of them, I think it was Janet Maslin, put this book in her top 10 for the year. And again, it's receiving universal praise. There are many books about Louis Armstrong out there, but this is just, another one that just came out, and it's supposed to be very good. It's not even processed yet, so by the time this show's on, it'll be on the shelf or checked out. I don't know. Zina?
This is also a biography. I think that's how it's going to be classified. I guess I'll have to look. Maybe not. Maybe it'll be in the 700s. It's about Laura Ashley. I don't exactly follow fashion, but she was popular in the 1960s and 70s when I was coming of age, and she grew up, I've discovered, which I didn't know any of this. She came from Wales. She was born in 1925, and she died very young, relatively young, when she was 59. She fell down the stairs at her house and took a wrong turn in the dark, which was really sad because she had a terrific empire, fashion empire of textiles and clothing, and she went into furnishings. I know her because, and she's most well known for these kind of flowery prints. She started out just by designing textiles using scarves that were made popular by Audrey Hepburn in 1953, Roman Holiday motion picture. And a large part of this book are the photographs of the furniture and wallpaper she designed. It's got pictures of her family as well, and just the visual impact of this book is really charming. I just found it interesting as well because of the history of the after the war, after the big World War II, and the development of the fashion industry after that. So this book is more than just a biography. It's a chronicle of a fashion industry in the middle of the 20th century. So Laura Ashley.
Okay, I've heard of her.
Good, by Martin Wood.
Well, here's a book, I would say in the last 10 years, one of the biggest publishing, I don't want to say phenomenon, one of the biggest increases in information in books and sales has been in religion, all religions and spiritualities. It's a very, in fact, as an example, Publishers Weekly is the magazine of the book industry, and they used to have a thing called Religion Update. It was usually in like once a year, and now there's so many books coming out on religion that it's in, I think it's quarterly now, I think, 4 times a year, maybe 5. But anyway, here's a book called The Future Church: How 10 Trends Are Revolutionizing the Catholic Church. I have not read it yet. I was skimming through it. It looks pretty interesting. I can't escape my Catholic school days, so this book really interested me. I'll just read you the 10 trends that this author, his name is John Allen Jr., who wrote a book called All the Pope's Men a few years ago. So he sees the 10 trends that are revolutionizing the Catholic Church. I'll just read you the trend. I mean, you can probably figure out what it is by the name. Trend 1, a world religion. A world church. Trend 2, evangelical Catholicism. Trend 3, Islam. Trend 4, the new demography. Trend 5, expanding lay roles. Trend 6, the biotech revolution. Trend 7, globalization. Trend 8, ecology. Trend 9, multipolarism. Trend 10, Pentecostalism. And I think, each chapter is 20, 30 pages long. It looks pretty interesting. Now, he chose these 10 trends from several, and he concludes the book. There's a chapter near the end that looked kind of interesting. It's called Trends That Aren't. And he lists 25 trends that he took the 10 from. So some of them are kind of on the wacky side. So you're going to have to get this book if you want to read that last chapter. But the rest of it does look like a very important book. The Catholic Church is always changing, but it's probably been changing for the last 40 years. They always say it's changing, but anyway, this book is called The Future Church: How 10 Trends Are Revolutionizing the Catholic Church. So, John Allen Jr. Zina?
Okay, this is a little different. It's for the adult budding scientist, inventor, somebody who likes to make things, see things fly or boom or zoom. It's called Things That Go Boom or Fly or Float and Zoom, 18 do-it-yourself projects to make. And I thought it was fascinating because when I first looked at it, I thought it was a children's book, but it was in the adult section. The simplest thing is a balloon-powered boat. I guess the most intricate thing is a light-following robot. There's something here to cover every mood and all abilities. They talk about an electronic music box, and that's something that looks like it came from Australia. Let's see if I can find it's a strange name. Let's see. Oh, maybe I won't be able to find it. If I find it, I'll mention it. Electronic music box, a lemon cannon, a cannon that throws lemons. The caveat that it's not made for a child, even though there's a soapbox go-kart instructions, very, very clear instructions, a lot of detail about how to put things together. And there's a boiler piston car. Let's see.
What about the things that blow up?
Yeah, really, thanks. I haven't gotten to that. Something called a stomper. It looks like an insect. Meet stomper. Its movement is closer to an insect-style flail than a purposeful march. It's powered by very simple electronics. It will walk around waving its legs wildly. It looks like a mechanical insect. I think I'll stay away from that. So, things that go boom or fly, float, and zoom. Do-it-yourself projects.
Okay.
All right.
Well, I probably shouldn't do this, but I shouldn't follow the book about the Catholic Church with a book about vampires, but I think I will.
This is a nice segue, huh?
This is called The Vampire Archives, and it's a brand new book. The subtitle is The Most Complete Volume of Vampire Tales Ever Published. It's a historical anthology, almost 1,000 pages, starting like the 1800s of vampire literature. And there's some poems in here too. And, vampire stuff or vampire
movies, books.
Vampire movies and books are very popular at the moment. There's even a subgenre of the chick lit called vampire chick lit. All these novels that have vampires. I haven't read any of them, but this book is more historical. And just to give you an idea of some of the authors in here, Edgar Allan Poe, of course. There's some poems by Goethe, Lord Byron, and John Keats. I didn't know they wrote vampire poems. We also have stories by Anne Rice, of course, Bram Stoker, who wrote Dracula, D.H. Lawrence, Arthur Conan Doyle, Stephen King, Roger Zelazny. Some of these authors you've heard of, some you might not. Guy de Maupassant wrote one. Interestingly, with the chicklet, vampire chicklet today is all women authors. These are all men authors, mostly. There's a few women in here, but anyway, it's mainly by theme, but these stories reach back to the 1800s. So if you're wondering where all today's vampire stuff started, these are all classic tales, and it's got a great introduction by Otto Penzler, who's sort of the king of pulp history, all kinds of pulps, detective, horror, vampire. So if you ever see his name on anything, he's the guy to read. So this is the Vampire Archives. Zina?
Speaking of vampires, I'm really into amusing books today. This is called Free Range Kids. I guess they could be called little vampires. Free Range Kids, giving our children the freedom we had without going nuts with worry. And why this is particularly interesting as a how-to parenting book in the big amount, standing out among all the how-to parenting books we do have. Her name is Lenore Skenazy, probably I'm mispronouncing it, wrote a newspaper article not too long ago about letting her 9-year-old ride the subway alone in New York City. And little did she realize that the response would spark a national movement and the counterstorm of protest from others, and they dubbed her America's Worst Mom. And she talks about her time in front of the camera and the Today Show and Fox News and all the media blitz that came to her and her son after her newspaper column or article was published, and she encourages people, parents, to let their kids be kids. There's funny stories. She talks about how extreme our society has become in protecting its children from all sorts of dangers. A lot of this rang true, given that I just raised 2 children successfully, but boy, it really hit some spots in my psyche. It busts some bubbles, it busts some myths about how vigilant we should be regarding to some of the equipment we let our children use, whether it's a crib, which I know is very serious, but she talks about helmets, and she talks about the statistics in a lot of cases about actually how many kids have been hurt by certain things, and how we all need to put it into perspective, and it's very amusing. She has a section on playground perils, pools and water and kids in toilets, not the fun part, school. I won't read some of this. I better not read it in front of the camera. But suffice to say that this will be a way to spend an amusing evening or two.
Okay. Now here's a book that was also named one of the 10 best books of the year by one of the 3 New York Times daily reviewers. It's a very serious book. It's it's called Family Properties, Race, Real Estate, and the Exploitation of Black Urban America by Beryl Sater. And what she does is she tries to sort of explode some of the myths of why there are urban ghettos in America, particularly in the 50s and 60s, using Chicago as sort of a case study. And she says, the author, according to the flap here, a lot of people think some of the causes are things like white flight, black pathology, the culture of poverty. She says, no, this is not the cause of some of these. She sees it as actually institutional racism, I guess is the word, by banks and real estate places and federal regulations and all this. So it's a different take on that, and it's the kind of book you look at, and I was skimming through it, you would think, well, exploitation of black Americans, this book, and real estate, this book must be, about 100 years ago, but it unfortunately is about recently in our past, in 1960s. I think the book even goes up to the 70s. So it did get good reviews. It was named one of the 10 best books by one of the daily reviewers, and it's called Family Properties: Race, Real Estate, and the Exploitation of Black Urban America by Beryl Sater. It looks like a very interesting, important book. So Zina, do you have one more?
Do we have time for one more?
Yes, we have time for one more.
I'll just mention, again, along the amusement side of books today, I just saw this on the shelf. I'd never heard of it. Joe immediately knew the book. It's a reprint of a book written in...
I think in the 70s.
Yeah. This is the...
But it's new, a new edition.
This is a new edition. P.S. Your Cat is Dead, a novel by James Kirkwood, co-author of A Chorus Line, the musical we all know about. And apparently, Joe tells me that this was a play.
Yes,
right?
it was a play.
It was a play.
Oh, it's a good book. It's very funny.
And I read this in one sitting, and it's hilarious. It doesn't seem dated at all, in the sense that you wouldn't know it was written decades ago. And there's a reason why it was reprinted. It's it's I'm sure going to have a big reading. There's going to be a big audience for it, even now in this generation. So, P.S. Your Cat is Dead by James Kirkwood. And I think that's all we have time for.
Okay, I would just say James Kirkwood, he unfortunately has died, but his other books are still out there. Wonderful writer, not just of A Chorus Line. He wrote a great novel called Some Kind of Hero. If you ever can get your hands on, I think it's hard to find, but I'm glad you read it.
Yeah, it was good.
Well, that's it for 30 books in 30 minutes this time. I don't think we made the 30, but who's counting? Okay, so we'll see you next time.